Welcome, welcome, come on in. The show's about to begin. Grab your seat and feel the nostalgia grow. Sit tight, relax, and enjoy the ride. We're so glad you're here. Let's go. It's time for Let's Play with AppleMatt.
In the late 1800s, millions of Americans came west, seeking fortune and adventure. Among them was Wyatt Earp, a legend of a man best known for his gunfight at the OK Corral. Most people remember him as a lawman, but he was also a buffalo hunter, a saloon keeper, a gambler, and a prospector. Some even say he was a murderer. Wyatt's gone now, as are all the others, and our town's quite empty. But their spirits live on, the spirit of the Old West. So, come with me to explore this old town. Discover the story of Wyatt Earp and what life was really like in the Old West. Howdy, partner. And welcome to Wyatt Earp's Old West. I'm George, and I'll be showing you around. This here's the signpost. Clicking it helps you to do a lot of things. For example, click town to begin roaming around. You can do this right now and bypass the rest of my directions. Click shootout to go directly to the gunfighting game. Click guns to remove the possibility of a gunfighter accosting you on the street. Click it again later if you change your mind. Click lingo to learn more about the Western terminology. Click exit to leave the program. Click help for advice on using the program. Click save before you leave so the program will remember what you've collected. Click load so you can begin again from where you last saved. During your visit, a few other tools of the trade will come in handy. You'll find these at the bottom of the screen. First, there's the picture of the signpost. Click that to come back here. Then there's the money bag. When you answer my questions right or shoot the bad guys, I'll put more money in. And you can use these coins in the one-armed bandit, which you'll find in the saloon. You can also click on the small picture of a map to see the whole town at once and where you're standing. And don't forget to click on the gun behind the Wyatt Earp sign at the bottom of the screen to turn your pointer into a gun. You should do this pretty quick if a gunfighter jumps out at you. You better get going now. I'll see you soon. A general store like this here was also known as a shebang. That apparently came from an Irish word meaning an informal sort of tavern. You see, this wasn't just a place to shop. It was also a place where folks could gather to drink and talk, even in dry towns. So, if you ever wondered where we got our expression, the whole shebang, well, now you know, partner. By the way, like the owner of the dry goods store across town, the keeper of this general store would usually become one of the more prominent, popular folks around. Besides selling people the stuff they needed and being a substantial barkeep, he might also serve as a banker, counselor, or just a plain good listener to half the town. That's right, partner, fresh onions. Can't make a good chili sauce without 'em. Even though the tin-coated metal can was invented in England in the early 1800s, most fresh vegetables in the West were stocked right out in front, where everyone could see 'em. If there's one thing the Old West had plenty of, it's barrels. That's because long before there was fancy packaging, most foodstuffs came in barrels. Coffee, tea, flour, biscuits, crackers, macaroni, heck, the list is endless. You just figured out how much you wanted, and the shopkeeper pulled it out of a barrel and wrapped it up in manila paper or put it in bags. Here's an example of 19th century sign making. Lamps and lanterns, straight and to the point. That's because food wasn't all that they had in a general store. In the Old West, they darn near carried everything under the sun. And when the sun went down, why, there was nothing more comforting than that warm lantern. I'm over here, shooter. Welcome to Boot Hill, partner. If you don't become a better shot, you'll have to hang up your holster. These three are the least fortunate participants in the gunfight at the OK Corral. The display of bodies to the general public soon after death was common in the Old West, and it was no exception for these three. After their deaths, their silver-trimmed caskets were displayed in the window of a hardware store, and when it came time for the funeral, their bodies were paraded through the crowded streets of Tombstone in extra fancy glass-lined hearses. As the procession passed one point in town, a friend of the victims held up a sign reading, "Murdered in the streets of Tombstone." This poor woman died from an infection sustained in childbirth. Bringing a child into this world was a much riskier proposition back in those days. Mr. Johnson bought a horse that was stolen, although he didn't know that. The folks that found him with the horse didn't know he didn't know. So he was taken for the thief and hanged just the same. This poor woman died from an infection. Charles was shot by his fellow rancher, William McCauley. The two were arguing over the best way to drive cattle, fast or slow. Guess old Bill kind of won that argument. This here's the gravedigger shack, but you won't find a gravedigger here now. That's because grave digging wasn't a full-time job when Wyatt Earp was in business. Usually, when a buckaroo hung up his saddle for the last time, went down the long trail to Kingdom Come, and shook hands with St. Peter, he would have been laid out in the boneyard by his family members or by some fellow who did odd jobs for the church. So this here shack might have just been a place to stash the shovels and such. Then again, any town that Wyatt inhabited might have been the first place to need a full-time gravedigger. You know, two folk you won't find here are Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. Both these noted gunfighters, ironically enough, died in bed of what you call natural causes. Doc took his last stand against tuberculosis in 1887 and lost. He was just 35. Wyatt, on the other hand, lived to be the ripe age of 80. Then he was buried in Colma, California. That's a quiet town with a whole mess of cemeteries. More folk dead than alive. John was the teamster on an ore wagon down at Tombstone's mine. He fell off, and one of the thick wheels ran right over his head, crushing his skull. James Tully was a hard-luck miner who tried to jump to safety from a runaway mine shaft cage. Instead, he fell 250 feet down the shaft to his death. In life, Annie was known as the Queen of Tombstone's red light district. For a new silver dollar, give me the right answer to this question. This here's the livery stable. If you were new to town, you'd make a beeline over here first. It was like a combination parking lot and rent-a-car agency, except that since America hadn't gotten around to inventing the automobile yet, it dealt in horses. If you brought your own horse to town, you could park it here, and the livery folks would feed it and watch out for it. That way you could go out drinking and gambling and carousing without having to worry about such responsibilities. Or, if you come to town by rail or stagecoach, you could rent a horse here. And for $5 a day, you could get a nice buggy, too. Now, if you're curious, just trot on over and poke your nose into whatever gear intrigues you. If you're traveling across the prairie, like Wyatt and his brothers did, this is the best seat in the house. Sitting up high on this wagon, you're kind of like the captain on the bridge of a ship. So it's no wonder that when these wagons were covered, they called them prairie schooners. When you're traveling across the rugged Southwest, the nearest store might have been 100 miles away. That's why you had to carry everything you needed to stay alive with you. So these bags hanging off the side of the wagon held everything from oats for the horses to plantain seeds, and even an odd whiskey bottle or two. This being the livery stable, y'all probably wondering, where's the liver? Well, there weren't none. The word livery came from an old French word, livrer, meaning to carry stuff from one place to another. And you head of the class buckaroos probably already guessed that that's also how we get our word delivery. When a wagon was fully loaded with supplies, going downhill could be a mighty tricky proposition. Even a pair of sturdy workhorses sometimes needed a little help slowing down. That's why wagons had brakes on them. These brakes are connected to a foot pedal up in the driver's seat that the driver'd step on real hard to slow the coach. This being the livery stable, y'all probably wondering, where's the Whether it was supplies and grain you were moving out to a ranch, or hauling coffins off to Boot Hill Cemetery, this here part of the wagon was where you put your cargo. And if you needed to haul such stuff but couldn't afford your own wagon, well, the local livery could rent you one with 2 horses for about $4 a day. It's also interesting to note that when Wyatt would have to quickly put a posse together, he'd come here to rent a horse without a wagon. A rush job like that had cost him about $3 per horse. Virgil Earp's wife, Allie, met the Earps sitting on the back of a wagon like this one. In her recollection, she says, "My shoes were off, and when Wyatt and Morgan reached out to shake hands, I stuck out a bare foot." Wyatt gave me a cold and nasty look, but Morgan pinched my toes real friendly. Once the sun went down, aside from the lights in the buildings, the Old West got pretty dark. Outside of town on a cloudy night, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. So a good lantern came in real handy. You could set it on your wagon and folks could see you coming for miles. quite often the livery would also double as a blacksmith, so you could always find a couple of spare wagon wheels lying around, waiting to get fixed. Window glass was expensive in the Old West and used only in houses, so the windows in a livery like this would be covered instead by wooden shutters. This would keep the critters like coyotes from coming in and messing with the place. This horse collar was one of the most important pieces of equipment a horse hitched to a wagon or stage wore. You see, the thick padded collar fit around the base of the horse's neck and evenly distributed the tremendous weight of the load that the beast pulled or pushed. That's right. Harnesses were designed to work along with the horse's natural tendency, which is to push against something instead of pull. That's why horses are so good at busting fences down. They just push on them until them boards just break. Like all things, even harnesses wore out. This one here looks like it's seen a lot of horses in its time. Most people would set them on a wall and forget about them. But some enterprising smarties would sell them as souvenirs to the city folk who wanted a taste of the dusty Old West. Wherever there are horses, there's lots of, well, you know what. These tools here are for the dirtiest job in the livery stable. Can you guess what it is? You got it right, partner. Cleaning up the horse manure. Anyone that's ever been around horses knows that they eat a lot of hay. And the easiest way to move hay around is with a pitchfork and a rake. These tools were also used to move around the straw, which is kind of like hay, but ain't much good for eating. The straw was used for horse bedding, which means the horses stood on it and manured it up real good. Then, the pitchfork and the rake would be used to drag out the dirty straw and put in some new. These tools were also real important to prevent fires, since lots of old hay and straw sitting around long enough could catch on fire all by itself. The Old West was a dusty place, and everything was carted around in boxes and crates. Why, when the Earps moved from Dodge City, they had a whole wagon full of crates like these. Looks like someone left something behind here. Or maybe they're just storing it for the night while they're out carousing. Wherever there are horses, there's lots of, well... A livery stable like this would have lots of barrels storing water and oats for the horses. Then they'd use baskets like this to deliver the oats to each horse. For a new silver dollar, give me the right answer to this question.